I stood at the window of the nurses' break room on the fourth floor of Scripps Memorial Hospital, watching the December rain wash across the San Diego skyline. The droplets streaked down the glass like tears, and I suppose that was fitting, because I'd cried enough of my own these past 3 weeks to fill an ocean. My name is Isabella Martinez. I'm 28 years old, and 3 weeks ago my world ended when a drunk driver ran a red light and sent my baby sister's car spinning into a concrete barrier. Welcome to Twisted MNT Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands, already knowing what I'd see. Another text from my Aunt Carmen. Insurance won't cover the experimental procedure. Doctor says without it, Sophia might never walk again. We need $340,000. Where are we going to get that kind of money, Mija? I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Sophia was 19, a college sophomore studying marine biology. She had her whole life ahead of her. And now she was lying in a bed 2 floors below me, her spine held together with pins and prayers, while I worked double shifts trying to scrape together money that wouldn't even cover a tenth of what she needed. Isabella, you okay? My colleague Jennifer touched my shoulder gently. You've been staring out that window for 10 minutes. Your break ended 5 minutes ago. I turned to her, forcing a smile. Yeah, just thinking. About Sophia? Jennifer knew the whole story. Everyone in the hospital did. The nurses had even started a GoFundMe, but we'd only raised $8,000. It was something, but it was nowhere near enough. Always, I admitted. She squeezed my arm. You're scheduled for VIP wing tonight, right? Room 412? I nodded. The VIP wing was where the hospital's wealthiest patients stayed, paying premium prices for luxury suites and private nurses. I usually avoided that floor, hated seeing people with more money than God, while my sister lay downstairs unable to afford the surgery that could save her life. But overtime was overtime, and I needed every penny. Mrs. Chen requested you specifically, Jennifer said. Said you were wonderful with her husband last month. That's kind of her. I grabbed my tablet and headed for the elevator, trying to push thoughts of Sophia out of my mind long enough to do my job. Room 412 was at the end of the hall, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. I knocked softly before entering, expecting to find Mrs. Chen's elderly husband again. Instead, I found someone new. He sat in a wheelchair by the window, his back to the door. All I could see was silver hair and broad shoulders draped in an expensive navy robe. The room was dim, the curtains half drawn, and classical music played softly from a speaker somewhere. Mr. Ashford? I checked my tablet. I'm Isabella Martinez, your night nurse. He didn't turn around. You're late. It's 7:03. Your shift starts at 7. His voice was strong, commanding, completely at odds with the wheelchair and the medical chart that listed advanced Alzheimer's disease and progressive mobility issues. I felt a flash of irritation, then immediately felt guilty for it. The man was sick. Of course he'd be difficult. I apologize, sir. I was just finishing up with another patient. What can I help you with this evening? You can start by coming where I can see you. I don't like talking to the air. I walked around the wheelchair and stopped a few feet in front of him. That's when I saw the dark sunglasses. He wore them indoors, in a dimly lit room, and they completely obscured his eyes. Combined with the silver hair and sharp jawline, it gave him an almost cinematic appearance, like an aging movie star hiding from paparazzi. There, he said, and I could see his mouth curve into something that might have been a smile. That's better. I like to see who I'm dealing with, even if I can't always remember their names. The chart says you have Alzheimer's, I said gently. Is that why you wear the sunglasses? Light sensitivity? Something like that. His fingers tapped on the armrest of his wheelchair. Tell me, Isabella Martinez, why do you work the night shift? The question caught me off guard. Excuse me? It's a simple question. You're young. You should be out living your life, not spending your evenings with sick old men like me. I bristled. I'm a nurse, Mr. Ashford. This is my job, and I happen to take it seriously. I'm sure you do. He leaned back in his wheelchair. But that's not why you're working overtime. I saw your name on 3 different shift schedules this week. Morning, evening, and night. You're exhausting yourself. Why? For a moment, I considered telling him it was none of his business. But something in his voice, beneath the commanding tone, sounded genuinely curious. Not judgmental. Just interested. My sister needs surgery, I heard myself say. Experimental procedure. Insurance won't cover it. I'm trying to save money. How much do you need? $340,000. I laughed bitterly. Give or take. So, as you can imagine, overtime helps. Every little bit. Mr. Ashford was silent for a long moment. Then he reached up and adjusted his sunglasses. I'd like you to be my private nurse. Full-time. I'll pay you double whatever the hospital pays, plus benefits. And I'll cover your sister's surgery. All of it. I stared at him. What? You heard me correctly. I'm dying, Miss Martinez. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe a year if I'm lucky. The Alzheimer's is progressing. Soon I won't know my own name. I need someone I can trust to care for me. Someone who won't steal from me or mistreat me when I can't fight back. But you don't even know me. I know enough. He tapped the armrest again. I know you're working yourself to death for your sister. That tells me you're loyal. I know you're gentle with your patients. Mrs. Chen's husband wouldn't stop talking about you. And I know you need money desperately, which means you won't walk away when things get difficult. That's not exactly reassuring, I said slowly. It sounds like you're saying I'll put up with anything because I'm broke. No. His voice softened. I'm saying you'll stay because you keep your commitments. There's a difference. But I need more than just a nurse, Miss Martinez. I need a companion. Someone who'll sit with me, talk with me, keep me company in the evenings. And I need you to marry me. The world tilted. I grabbed the back of a nearby chair to steady myself. I'm sorry, what? Marriage. He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather. Legal, binding, proper. I have relatives who are circling like vultures, waiting for me to die so they can fight over my money. If I have a wife, the inheritance goes to her automatically. Much simpler, much cleaner. This is insane, I whispered. You're asking me to marry you for money. I'm asking you to marry me, to save your sister's life. He leaned forward slightly. And in return, you'll save mine. Not from dying. I'm past that. But from dying alone, forgotten, in a hospital room with strangers. I have money, Miss Martinez. More than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I can't buy what I need most. Someone who'll stay. I should have said no. Should have walked out of that room and reported him to the hospital administration. But all I could think about was Sophia, lying in her bed downstairs, her future balanced on a scale that tipped toward wheelchairs and limitations unless I could find a miracle. How do I know you're serious? I asked. How do I know this isn't some cruel joke? Mr. Ashford reached into his robe pocket and pulled out a business card. My attorney, Gregory Blake. Call him tomorrow. He'll explain everything. The contract, the prenuptial agreement, the trust fund I'm establishing for your sister's care. Everything legal and proper. I took the card with numb fingers. And what do you get out of this? Really? For the first time, he seemed to hesitate. Honestly, I don't want to die alone. I don't want my last months to be filled with nothing but medical procedures and empty rooms. I want to hear someone laugh. I want to have conversations over dinner. I want to remember what it feels like to have family around, even if it's not my real family, even if it's bought and paid for. The sadness in his voice made my chest ache. I'd seen so many patients die alone in this hospital, seen the fear in their eyes when they realized no one was coming to visit, no one cared. And suddenly, this wealthy man in his expensive suite with his dark sunglasses didn't seem so different from them. I need to think about it, I said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. Well, not all the time. The doctors say I should probably make arrangements within the next month or two, while I'm still coherent enough to sign legal documents. He smiled, a real smile this time. But I understand this is a lot to process. I finished my shift in a daze, going through the motions of checking vitals and distributing medications while my mind spun in circles. At midnight, I finally went down to Sophia's room. She was awake, staring at the ceiling. Hey, Bella, she said softly. She was the only one who called me that. You look exhausted. Long shift. I sat in the chair beside her bed and took her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a car." She managed a weak smile. "Oh wait, I did get hit by a car. Don't joke about it." "If I don't joke, I'll cry. And I'm tired of crying." She squeezed my hand. "Aunt Carmen told me about the surgery, about how much it costs." "Bella, I don't want you killing yourself trying to save me." "Stop it. We're going to figure this out." "How?" Tears filled her eyes. "How are we going to get that kind of money? It's impossible." I looked at my baby sister, 19 years old with her whole life ahead of her, and made my decision. The next morning, I called Gregory Blake. 3 days later, I sat in a law office downtown, reading through the most surreal contract I'd ever seen. Gregory Blake was a thin man in his 50s with a perpetual frown and eyes that looked like they'd never seen genuine joy. "It's quite straightforward," he said, tapping the pages with a manicured finger. "You marry Mr. Ashford. You live with him at his residence in La Jolla. You provide companionship and basic care, though he'll have medical staff for the more intensive needs. In return, he pays for your sister's surgery immediately. You receive a monthly salary of $15,000. And upon his death, you inherit 30% of his estate. The rest goes to charity." "What about his family?" "Mr. Ashford has a nephew, Nathan Ashford, who will receive a trust fund but nothing more. He's made it very clear he doesn't want Nathan getting control of his money." Gregory's expression suggested he agreed with that decision. "There's also a son, Michael, but they've been estranged for over 20 years. Michael's whereabouts are unknown." I scanned the contract again. This says the marriage must last until Mr. Ashford's death, with no option for divorce. Correct. If you leave him before he passes, you forfeit everything except what's already been paid for your sister's care. The monthly salary stops, and you receive nothing from the estate. "And if he recovers? If he lives longer than expected?" Gregory actually smiled, though it looked painful. "Then you're a very wealthy young woman for a very long time. But between you and me, Miss Martinez, I've seen his medical reports. The Alzheimer's is real. The decline is inevitable. I'd be surprised if he makes it to next Christmas." I thought about Mr. Ashford sitting in his wheelchair, asking not to die alone. What's he like? Really? Victor Ashford is many things. Brilliant, difficult, generous when it suits him, and ruthless when it doesn't. He built a real estate empire from nothing, then sold it 5 years ago for more money than most countries have in their treasury. He's been alone since his wife died 15 years ago, and his son left shortly after. He trusts almost no one, which is why you should consider it an enormous compliment that he's chosen you, or a sign of how desperate he is. Perhaps both. Gregory slid a pen across the desk. "But the question is, are you desperate enough to sign?" I picked up the pen, thought about Sophia, about the surgery she needed, about the life she deserved to live. I signed. The wedding happened exactly 1 week later. No guests, no celebration, just me, Victor, Gregory Blake as witness, and a judge who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I wore a simple cream dress I'd bought on sale. Victor wore a charcoal suit and his ever-present sunglasses. When the judge pronounced us husband and wife, Victor took my hand. His palm was warm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Thank you," he whispered. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. The drive to his house, my new home, took 40 minutes up the coast. We wound through La Jolla's most exclusive neighborhood until we reached gates that opened onto a private drive. And then I saw it. The house sprawled along a clifftop overlooking the Pacific, all glass and white stone, modern and breathtaking. The grounds were immaculate, with native plants and walking paths that led down to a private beach cove. "It's beautiful," I breathed. "It was my wife's dream house," Victor said quietly. "She died before we could finish building it. I completed it anyway. Seemed like the least I could do." A woman in her 60s met us at the door. She had kind eyes and calloused hands, and she looked at Victor with obvious affection. "Isabella, this is Rosa. She's been my housekeeper and cook for 20 years. Rosa, this is my wife, Isabella." Rosa's eyebrows shot up, but she recovered quickly and smiled at me. "Welcome, Mrs. Ashford. I've prepared the guest suite for you. Mr. Victor thought you might prefer your own space." "Thank you," I said, grateful for his consideration. That first night, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows in my suite, watching the moonlight dance on the ocean. This was my life now. Living in a mansion with a dying millionaire, bought and paid for like a piece of furniture, the thought made me sick. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Carmen. Sophia's surgery is scheduled for next week. The doctors say she has an excellent chance of full recovery. I don't know how you did this, Mija, but thank you. Thank you so much. I cried then, pressing my hand to the glass, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. I'd sold myself, but I'd saved my sister, and I supposed that would have to be enough. Dinner with Victor became our routine. Every evening at 7, we'd meet in what he called the small dining room, though it was larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. Rosa would serve something delicious, and we'd talk. At first, the conversations were stilted, awkward, but slowly, I began to see past the sunglasses and the wheelchair to the man underneath. He was sharp, funny in a dry way, and surprisingly well-read. We talked about books, about the ocean, about everything except the elephant in the room, the fact that this was a business arrangement and he was dying. "Tell me about your sister," he said one evening, about 2 weeks after the wedding. I told him about Sophia, about how she used to spend hours at the tide pools near our apartment, cataloging every creature she found. About how she'd declared at age 8 that she was going to be a marine biologist and never wavered from that dream. "She sounds remarkable," Victor said softly. "She is. She's the best person I know." "Then I'm glad I could help her." He paused. "You know, I had a son once, Michael. He wanted to be an architect." It was the first time he'd mentioned his son. I set down my fork carefully. "What happened?" "I happened." His mouth twisted. "I was building my empire, working 18-hour days, missing birthdays, school events, everything that mattered. His mother, Catherine, she tried to tell me, tried to make me understand that I was losing them both. But I was too proud, too focused on success. I thought providing for them was enough. I thought money meant love. And it doesn't. Money means security, comfort, options. But love?" He shook his head. "Love requires presence, time, attention, all the things I didn't give. Catherine died of cancer when Michael was 22. I threw myself into work even harder, thinking that's what she would have wanted. Michael tried to talk to me about it, tried to tell me he needed me. And I told him I was busy, told him to grow up and handle it himself." Victor. He left 6 months later, packed a bag and walked out, said he was done waiting for a father who was never going to show up. That was 23 years ago. I haven't heard from him since. The pain in his voice was so raw it hurt to hear. "Have you tried to find him?" "For years. Hired investigators, traced every lead. It's like he vanished into thin air. And maybe that's my punishment, to spend my final days without my son, because I never appreciated him when I had the chance." I reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm sorry." He looked down at our joined hands, and even through the dark lenses of his sunglasses, I could sense his surprise. "You're very kind, Isabella, much kinder than I deserve." Something shifted between us that night. The wall of formality began to crack. He was no longer just the millionaire who'd bought my companionship. He was a lonely man with regrets, trying to make peace with his past before time ran out. The next morning, I found him in his study, staring at an old photograph. It showed a younger version of Victor with a beautiful woman and a teenage boy. His family, the family he'd lost. "That's them," he said, noticing me in the doorway. "Catherine and Michael. This was taken a year before she died. Look how happy she looks." She had no idea how little time she had left. I stepped closer, studying the photo. The boy had Victor's jawline, his mother's gentle eyes. "He looks like you." Everyone said that. Same stubborn streak too. He set the photo down carefully. "I keep hoping that somehow, some way, he'll find out I'm dying and come home. But why would he? I certainly don't deserve it." Over the following weeks, I fell into a rhythm. Mornings, I'd help Victor with his physical therapy exercises. The Alzheimer's made him forgetful sometimes, but his body was stronger than his medical charts suggested. Afternoons, we'd sit on the terrace overlooking the ocean, and I'd read to him. Evenings, we'd have dinner and talk. Rosa watched our growing friendship with knowing eyes. One afternoon, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You care about him," she said. It wasn't a question. "He's my husband." The words still felt strange on my tongue. "No, Mija. You care about him. I can see it in how you look at him. How you make sure he takes his medications. How you laugh at his terrible jokes. His jokes aren't that terrible." She smiled. "See, you defend him. That's not something a contract wife does." I busied myself making tea, avoiding her eyes. "I'm just being kind. He's lonely." "So are you," Rosa said gently. "You both found each other at the right time. Don't fight it." But I was fighting it. Because caring about Victor meant it would hurt more when he died. And he was dying. Some days were better than others, but I could see the disease creeping in. He'd forget what day it was, forget where he'd put things. Once, he called me Catherine, his late wife's name, and the confusion in his voice when I gently corrected him broke my heart. Then Sophia's surgery happened, and everything else faded to background noise. I sat in the waiting room for 8 hours while they worked on her spine, inserting the experimental implants that might let her walk again. Victor wanted to come with me, but I convinced him to stay home. This was something I needed to do alone. When the surgeon finally emerged, her smile told me everything I needed to know. "The surgery went perfectly," she said. "We won't know for sure until she wakes up and we start rehabilitation, but I'm very optimistic." I called Victor from the hospital chapel, crying too hard to speak coherently. "Isabella, breathe," he said calmly. "Is Sophia all right?" "She's going to walk," I sobbed. "The surgery worked. She's going to walk." "That's wonderful news." His voice was warm, genuinely happy. "I'm so glad." "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for giving me this. For giving her this." "You don't need to thank me. I did this as much for myself as for her. Knowing I helped save someone's future, it gives me hope that maybe my life counted for something after all." I stayed with Sophia until she woke up, holding her hand and watching the monitors. When her eyes finally fluttered open and she squeezed my fingers, I felt like I could breathe again for the first time in months. "Hey," she whispered. "Did it work?" "The doctor thinks so. We won't know for sure until you start rehab, but she's optimistic." Tears rolled down Sophia's cheeks. "I was so scared, Bella. So scared I'd never walk again." "I know, sweetie. But you're going to be okay. You're going to recover, and you're going to finish college, and you're going to study all the ocean creatures you want. Because of him, right, your husband?" She'd been shocked when I told her about the marriage, but she'd understood. "Desperate times. I want to meet him. I want to thank him." "You will. Soon." I drove home in the early morning light, exhausted but lighter than I'd felt in months. When I arrived, Rosa met me at the door, her face troubled. "He had an episode last night," she said quietly. "Bad one. Didn't know where he was. Thought his wife was still alive. I finally got him calm around midnight. Guilt washed over me. I should have been here." "No, you should have been with your sister. But Mija, you need to be prepared. These episodes are going to get worse. The doctor called yesterday. Said we might need to think about additional care soon." I found Victor in his study, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at nothing. When he heard me come in, he turned, and I saw the uncertainty in his face. "Isabella?" He said my name like a question, like he wasn't quite sure. "It's me." I knelt beside his wheelchair. "I'm here. I got confused last night." His voice shook. I couldn't remember where I was. I kept calling for Catherine, thinking she'd help me. "But she's dead, isn't she?" "Yes. I'm sorry." He reached up and touched my face, his fingers trembling. "I'm scared, Isabella. I'm scared of forgetting everything. Forgetting you." I covered his hand with mine. "Then we'll make sure every day counts. We'll make enough memories that even if you forget some, there will still be pieces left." He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. And I held him back, this man who'd bought my companionship but somehow earned my affection. That's when I realized Rosa was right. I wasn't just being kind. I cared about him. Genuinely, deeply cared about him. The realization terrified me. It was 3 days before Christmas when Nathan Ashford showed up. I was in the kitchen with Rosa, making plans for a small holiday dinner, when the doorbell rang. Rosa went to answer it and came back with a tall man in his 40s, expensively dressed, with Victor's same sharp jawline and cold eyes. "Isabella Ashford, I presume?" He extended a hand. "Nathan Ashford, Victor's nephew." I shook his hand cautiously. "Mr. Ashford didn't mention you were coming." "Uncle Victor doesn't know I'm here. I thought I'd surprise him. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And of course, I wanted to meet his new wife." Quite the whirlwind romance, wasn't it? "How long did you know each other before the wedding?" 3 days? That's none of your business." "Oh, but it is my business. You see, I'm my uncle's only living relative, besides his missing son. And suddenly he marries a woman 40 years younger than him, right when his Alzheimer's is getting worse?" Nathan's voice hardened. "Forgive me if I find that suspicious." "I don't care what you find suspicious." Victor made his choices. "While mentally competent? Are you sure about that? Because Gregory Blake mentioned Uncle Victor's been having episodes. Forgetting things. Getting confused. That doesn't sound like someone who should be making major legal decisions." Before I could respond, Victor's voice came from the doorway. "Nathan, what an unpleasant surprise." Nathan's expression shifted to something falsely warm. "Uncle Victor, I came to check on you. Heard you got married. Wanted to meet the lucky bride. Now you've met her. You can leave." "Don't be like that. We're family." "Family who hasn't visited in 5 years. Family who only calls when he needs money." Victor wheeled himself into the kitchen. "What do you want, Nathan?" "Just concerned about your well-being. That's all." I saw Gregory Blake appear behind Nathan, and my stomach dropped. What was Victor's lawyer doing here with Nathan? "Mr. Ashford," Gregory said smoothly, "I came with Nathan because he raised some valid concerns about your mental competency. As your attorney, I have a duty to ensure all your legal affairs are in order." "My affairs are perfectly in order." "Are they?" "You've been having memory lapses." "Confusion. The nurses have documented multiple episodes." Gregory pulled out a folder. "I think we should schedule a competency evaluation, just to be safe." "To be safe? Or to give Nathan grounds to contest my will?" Victor's voice was sharp, cutting. Nathan held up his hands. "Uncle Victor, I'm not trying to contest anything. I just want to make sure you're being taken care of properly. And frankly, I'm not sure a young woman you barely know is the best person for that job." "Get out," Victor said quietly. "Both of you. Get out of my house." "Uncle Victor." "I said get out!" His voice rose, shaking with rage. "You don't give a damn about my well-being, Nathan. You never have. You're just angry that I left everything to Charity and Isabella instead of you. Well, that's my choice to make, and I'm still competent enough to make it." Gregory and Nathan exchanged glances. Then Gregory said, "Very well. But Mr. Ashford, be aware that if your mental state continues to deteriorate, we may need to pursue guardianship proceedings for your own protection." After they left, Victor sat in his wheelchair, shaking. I knelt beside him, taking his hands. "They're going to try to take everything away," he whispered. "Going to say I'm not capable of making decisions. Put me in some facility where Nathan can control everything. I won't let them." "How will you stop them?" "If they can prove I'm incompetent, then we prove you're not. We document every good day, every clear moment. We get your doctors to testify about your condition. And we fight." I squeezed his hands. "I'm not going to let them take you away, Victor. I promise." He looked at me, and I saw hope flicker in his face. "Why? You've fulfilled your end of the bargain. Sophia's surgery is paid for. You could walk away right now with your monthly salary, and no one would blame you." "Because you're my husband," I said simply. "And I don't abandon people I care about." "You care about me?" His voice was barely a whisper. I realized it was true. Somewhere between the dinners and the conversations and the quiet moments reading on the terrace, I'd fallen for him. Not the money, not the house. Him. The brilliant, broken man who hid behind sunglasses because he was afraid of people seeing his vulnerability. "Yes," I said. "I care about you." Victor reached up slowly and removed his sunglasses. I'd never seen him without them. His eyes were striking, mismatched, one blue and one green, heterochromia. The result of childhood trauma, he'd later tell me, a car accident when he was 8. But they were beautiful, and they were looking at me with such naked emotion that I couldn't breathe. "I was in an accident when I was young," he said quietly. "Killed my mother, left me with these eyes. Kids made fun of me relentlessly. I learned to hide them, learned to hide everything. But you make me want to stop hiding." I leaned forward and kissed him. Gentle, soft, real, the first real kiss of our marriage. When we pulled apart, he was crying. "I don't deserve you." "Maybe not. But you've got me anyway." The weeks that followed were both the best and worst of my life. Victor and I grew closer, spending every moment we could together. But Nathan and Gregory were circling, filing motions, requesting evaluations. The stress was taking its toll on Victor. The episodes became more frequent, the confusion more profound. One night in early January, I found him wandering the halls at 3 a.m., calling for Catherine. He didn't recognize me, didn't recognize the house. I spent an hour gently guiding him back to reality, and when he finally remembered who I was, he sobbed in my arms. "I'm losing myself," he whispered. "Piece by piece, I'm disappearing. I'm still here. I'll remember for both of us." But I was scared. Nathan had filed for emergency guardianship, claiming Victor was a danger to himself. The hearing was scheduled for next week. Then Rosa came to me with something she'd overheard. "I was cleaning near Mr. Gregory's car yesterday when he called," she said, her face troubled. "I heard him talking to Nathan. They were discussing how did he say it? Expedite the situation. Said something about adjusting Mr. Victor's medications." My blood ran cold. "They're planning to make him worse, to drug him so he seems more confused at the hearing." That's what it sounded like to me. I don't have proof, Mija. Just what I heard. I thought about Victor's medications. Gregory had access to them through the medical staff he'd helped hire, staff who were loyal to him, not Victor. That night, I started monitoring everything Victor consumed. Every pill, every meal, every drink. I documented everything, taking photos, keeping logs. 3 days later, Victor had his worst episode yet. He became violent, throwing things, screaming that we were trying to kill him. It took me and 2 orderlies to calm him down. And when I checked his evening medications afterward, I found an extra pill mixed in, a sedative he wasn't prescribed. I had my proof. I called the police, called Victor's doctors, called everyone I could think of. And when Nathan and Gregory showed up for what they thought would be an easy guardianship hearing, they instead found themselves facing fraud charges and investigation. The recordings from Rosa's phone, the extra medication I'd found, the medical records showing Victor's sudden decline coinciding with Gregory's increased access to his care, it all painted a damning picture. "You tried to poison my husband," I told Gregory in the courthouse hallway, my voice shaking with rage. "You were supposed to protect him, and instead you tried to destroy him for money." "You have no proof," Gregory said coldly. "Just the word of a housekeeper and a gold-digger wife." "I have security footage," I said. "Turns out Rosa installed cameras in the house last month. Caught you on video tampering with Victor's medications. The police have already seen it." Gregory's face went white. The charges stuck. Gregory Blake was arrested, along with Nathan, who'd been complicit in the scheme. The investigation revealed they'd been planning to have Victor declared incompetent, put him in a facility, and split his estate between them. With the stress gone and the medications properly managed, Victor's condition stabilized. He still had bad days, moments of confusion, but he had good days too, days where he was sharp and present and fully himself. It was Valentine's Day when he surprised me. I came down to breakfast to find him standing, not in his wheelchair, but standing, leaning on a cane but upright. The wheelchair was mostly psychological, he admitted, seeing my shock. The doctor said I could walk, but I didn't see the point, didn't see a future worth walking toward. But now I do. Now I have you. He took my hand and led me outside to the cliff overlooking our private beach. There, set up on the sand, was a picnic blanket and champagne. "I know our marriage started as a business arrangement," Victor said. "But somewhere along the way, it became real, at least for me. And I was hoping, if you'd allow it, that we could start over. Not as contracts or arrangements, but as 2 people who found each other when they needed it most." I kissed him, tasting salt air and hope. "I think we already have." We renewed our vows on that beach a month later, Sophia was there, walking with a cane, but walking. Aunt Carmen came. Rosa stood as my maid of honor. And to everyone's shock, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and Victor's eyes showed up halfway through the ceremony. Michael, Victor's son. Rosa had tracked him down through old photographs and social media, refusing to give up even when I told her it might be impossible. The reunion between father and son was messy, tearful, full of 20 years of hurt and regret. But it was also full of forgiveness, understanding, and hope for the future. "I'm sorry," Victor told his son, holding him tight. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." "I'm sorry too," Michael said. "I should have come back sooner. Shouldn't have been so stubborn." "You get that from me," Victor said, and they both laughed through their tears. 2 years later, Victor's Alzheimer's had progressed, but slowly. He had good days and bad days. On the good days, we'd walk on the beach, or sit on the terrace reading, or cook dinner with Rosa. On the bad days, I'd hold his hand and remind him who he was, who we were. Michael and his family visited often. We'd become close, bonded by our love for Victor and our determination to make his remaining time meaningful. Michael's daughter, Emma, adored her grandfather, and watching Victor play with her in the surf filled my heart more than I ever thought possible. Sophia finished college and started her master's program in marine biology. She came by every weekend, eager to tell Victor about her research, and he'd listen with such pride it made me cry. And sometimes, on clear nights, Victor and I would sit on our cliff watching the stars, his arm around me, my head on his shoulder. "Do you regret it?" he asked me once. "Marrying me for money?" "I married you to save my sister," I corrected. "But I stayed because I fell in love with you. There's a difference." "I love you too," he said. Never thought I'd get the chance to say that again. Never thought anyone would want a broken old man with mismatched eyes and a failing mind. Good thing I'm not just anyone then. He kissed my temple. Good thing. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.